Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. On this program, I want to continue with our series on the book of Daniel, chapter 11. We've already discovered that Daniel divided the 45 verses into three different sections. The first 12 verses are divided into a 4-4-4 division. The next 18 verses are separated into 3-6-6-6 verse sections. And the last 15 verses are divided up into a 5-5-5 sequence. Daniel does this in order to reveal to us who the last king of the north and the last king of the south are. The last king of the north is the premier of Russia. The last king of the north is not Antiochus Epiphanes, nor is he the Antichrist. He is the last great precursor of the Antichrist. And the last king of the south will be the president of the United States. I believe the last premier of Russia, de facto head, will be Vladimir Putin. And the last president of the United States will be Barack Obama. As we observed, Moscow and Jerusalem and Kenya are in a straight line on the globe. Kenya, of course, is where the forebears of Barack Obama came from. Now let's look at the last 5 verses of chapter 11, which will describe for us the Antichrist. Let's take a closer look at these last 5 verses of chapter 11, which will give us important information about the Antichrist. In verse 41, he says, "And he shall enter into the glorious land, and many shall fall, and these only shall be saved out of his hand, Edom and Moab, and the principal children of Ammon." Now we know that the Antichrist will crush the entire world. So how can 3 obscure neighborhoods like Edom and Moab and Ammon survive the Antichrist? Edom and Moab do not even exist anymore. And although Ammon is the capital of Jordan, even then Daniel says that only the principal children will survive. Consequently, we must look at the symbolic meanings for Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Now there will be 3 religious groups who survive the Antichrist: the raptured Protestants, the protected Catholics, and the converted Jews. These 3 groups are symbolized by Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Let's look first at Ammon. Who was he? Ammon was the son which Lot had by his eldest daughter. Therefore, he represents the eldest of these 3 religious groups, that is, the Jews who are converted by Enoch and Elijah. Now, Moab was the son that Lot had by his youngest daughter. He therefore symbolizes the raptured Protestants, the youngest of these 3 denominations. Edom was a nickname for Esau, and it means red, because Esau was a redneck. He was an outdoorsman. He therefore symbolizes the Catholics who are protected with Mary in the desert when they flee from the Antichrist. Now let's look at verse number 42 and 43. "And he shall lay his hand upon the lands, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And he shall pass through Libya and Ethiopia." Again, we know that the Antichrist will subdue the entire world, including the European Union, including Russia, America, and Britain, who will destroy each other in World War III. Therefore, why does Daniel just mention 3 tiny nations as being subdued by the Antichrist? Again, these 3 nations symbolize the entire world. We must look at their symbolic meaning. Now, Egypt was settled by Ham. In fact, if you read Psalm 105 in your Bibles, Egypt is called the land of Ham. Ethiopia was settled by Sem, another of Noah's 3 sons. That's why the people in Ethiopia are of Semitic origin. Now Japheth, the 3rd son of Noah, went north, and his descendants traveled across Europe. And I believe they came down across the Straits of Gibraltar and some of them settled into North Africa, including Libya. Therefore, these three nations, Libya, Ethiopia, and Egypt, were settled by the three sons of Noah, Sem, Ham, and Japheth, and therefore they represent all the people of the world, because all the people of the world are descended from Noah. And now let's look at verse 44. And tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Now other Bible scholars completely misinterpret this passage. They think that Russia is going to invade Israel. No, that's not true. The tidings out of the east refer to a comet, the end times comet, which will strike the planet. I believe this is the same as the Star of Bethlehem, which announced Jesus' first coming. This is one of the signs in the sun, moon, and stars of the end times. The tidings out of the north, which trouble the Antichrist, refer to signs from Megiddo, where the Battle of Armageddon will take place. Megiddo is due north of Jerusalem. These are the two things which trouble the Antichrist the most, because he knows that his time is short. These are the two chastisements which will end his short reign upon earth. In verse 45, Daniel writes about the Antichrist. And he shall fix his tabernacle apadno between the seas upon a glorious and holy mountain. Now, apadno in this case refers to his palace or tent which he sets up. But of course it is more than that. This is symbolic. It's not a temple, as a lot of Bible scholars believe. This is the Roman Catholic Church, which the false prophet will move from Rome to Jerusalem, along with the Antichrist, when the Antichrist moves his capital from Rome to Jerusalem. The three capitals of the one world communist beast, which rules the earth in the end times, begin in Moscow, then move to Rome, and finally to Jerusalem. The Vatican will be crushed by the Gentiles, as St. John writes, and the Vatican will move to Jerusalem. This is the temple of Apadno, which Daniel is talking about. Now, all these prophecies about the Antichrist are interesting, but they should not be our main concern. We should be much more concerned with the last king of the north and the last king of the south, because World War III is in our immediate future. The beginning of sorrows, as Jesus says in the Olivet Discourse, begin with World War III, wars and rumors of war. And the beginning of the tribulation is not when a supposed covenant is signed with the Jews and the Antichrist. The beginning of sorrows, the beginning of the tribulation period, is marked by World War III. That is the next event on the prophetic calendar. That is what we must prepare for. That is why we must go out of the whore of Babylon, which is our own decadent Western culture. If we are going to survive the plagues which fall upon Babylon / United States / England, then we must go out from her. That concludes our series on Daniel chapter 11. If you would like more information, please write to the address you see on your screen.